All right, guys, so I know that we are possibly looking at coming back on campus soon if we are not on the KVA track. We'll figure all that out as we go. But having just taken our first test, usually if we're in person, it's still not a shock to have people score a lot lower than they originally thought. And part of that is because the transition from junior high pre-AP, where things were honestly not crazy challenging, and if you kind of just know what you're doing and they give you a calculator that could do a lot of the problems for you, you can kind of just get through a test. We are like, if you don't know something, you will miss it. So make sure that we are truly practicing our homeworks, that we are going over those things, that we are like those learning targets that we put in there. Make sure it's like a checklist of every single thing. Like talk about every type of line that you reflected over. So if you look over your work and you find that you were constantly missing the questions that reflected over y equals x and y equals negative x, do you even know what those look like? Did you practice them on your homeworks? Did you practice them on the extra practice? Were you getting all those things right? Did you look at it and go, oh, I know exactly what that looks like. I know exactly how to reflect over it. Because if you didn't have that confident reaction to that, it means it's something you need to go look over or come on a Zoom call and ask about, because you're going to miss those questions. And so that's going to keep happening if we don't get it. And I know some people are going to be like, oh, it's because it's on online and it's just harder to learn this way. Like, girl, I'm not saying that that's not kind of the case, but I'm telling you every year this is the same thing that happens, and also every year people figure out how to study and they end up doing a lot better than they start off in. So it's not necessarily you, but it is a little bit. We need to figure out what do we need to do differently to get better, and if part of that is just coming on our call and asking more questions, things like that. Okay, I'm gonna move on. This calendar is and has already been in the course information section on Canvas. So you're welcome to continue to reference this. Couple of things, like we just took a test yesterday. It has all of the homeworks listed, like, because all the homeworks from here on out are going to be out of the textbook, or like 99% of the homeworks are out of the textbook. And so here is where the problems are listed. So if you want to print this out or you just want to have to open up and reference it, that's where it's at. At the end of each lesson video, the last slide will also include this information. So if you're actually watching these videos, you're gonna see the homework right there. You can pause it, write it down. If you don't, then you need to get off of this calendar, because if you're like, wait, what homework? That means you didn't watch this video. Okay, another couple of things. Make sure you have access to the textbook. That's what I was thinking. I was like, no, I wasn't about to lecture you. I had to just remember what I was going to talk about. You can access this by, if you're on an actual computer, when you go to Canvas and you go to the module and it says like textbook and you click it, number one, you have to be in Chrome. Number two, for most people, the first time you do this, Chrome blocks it as like a pop-up. So in the little address bar, usually the first time you click it, you'll see a little notification that clicks there. And you've got to click that and say allow pop-ups from this place permanently, whatever, click it out. Refresh the page, or like go back out and click through. When I did that, it opened up just beautifully. You click student edition, you can like go to whatever page, no big deal. If you have a phone, there is an app that you can download, and all of the details of that are in that textbook Canvas message I sent you. Now, I personally have an iPhone and an iPad, and I could check that it did work on both of those. I'm assuming on an Android it also will work, but I will just tell you from me personally, I can only give you walkthrough step-by-step instructions on an Apple device. But that video does show you what to do, does explain the steps, it gives you the name of the app you need to download, all of that. Make sure that's working, because if not, we can't access things. Okay, you are also able to just request a textbook. You need to get in contact with a textbook clerk or have one of your parents reach out. We have enough books. You can absolutely have one checked out to you. And to me, that's honestly gonna be the easiest option, just so you have it and can flip through it. That's my recommendation, but make that on your big to-do list, figure out the textbook access. Another thing is that I'm not going to do this video because I'm already talking a long time, but I am going to start putting warm-ups in some of these videos. And what I tell my kids in class is that warm-ups are not to waste your time. Warm-ups are not to sit here and go, oh, I just need to check attendance. Could y'all just work on this for 4 minutes? No. Warm-ups to me are because I'm a teacher. I've been doing this a long time, and I know the questions that you guys generally keep missing on quizzes and tests. And so I'm going to constantly be pulling things that I know that you need in your head. And so do not skip warm-ups. They are for you, and if you are skipping them, I don't want to hear it. when you miss those things on quizzes and tests, right? You've got to do those and you've got to think about them. Just pause the video when it gets to one, work it out, unpause it, see what's going on with it. Okay, we are also no longer doing printed notes. All of your notes, whether you're in person or online, you just need to take down what you think is important. Okay, an answer key of the notes will be up there. But again, it's now your job to kind of take down what you feel like is important. Okay, so with that being said, and why I spent so much time talking is this first lesson is not crazy challenging, but there is one interesting thing I need to talk about. It is this thing called the chapter worksheet. So the chapter worksheet you will get on the first day of a new unit. So we are starting chapter 1.1, you will get a chapter worksheet. So however many chapters we have throughout the school year, I think there's 10 total. We already did chapter 9, so there's like 8 more to go. You will get a chapter worksheet for each of those. So sometimes it's like 1 to 6 weeks, sometimes it's 2, depending how they overlap. That chapter worksheet is always going to be due the day before the chapter test. A chapter worksheet normally is just a bunch of extra practice of concepts from that unit. Some things that are really easy, some that are medium, some that are meant on purpose to be challenging and tricky and cause you to have to like really talk about them. Now, here's how that works. If you are in person normally, right, there's nothing to do with KVA or online school right now. If you were in this program last year, on the day before that test, you walk in and you turn in your chapter worksheet all worked out and done. Okay, obviously you would have compared notes with other friends, you would have come into different tutoring sessions to get help on them, because you're basically wanting to try to get as close to a perfect 100 on this as possible. Now you're like, dude, I'm just gonna go find my friend who has all the great answers and steal them and get a 100. Girl, you think nobody's tried that before? No. Here's how this actually works. You need to come in with that done, and normally I take that as 50 points of your quiz grade. So you can get all the perfect answers from somebody, there's your 50. If you want a 50, that's all you gotta do. Okay, if you're trying to get your 100, we are usually going to pull about 5 questions at random from this chapter worksheet. And they're not gonna be identical. We're gonna change the numbers a little bit, but the wording is gonna almost be exact. So if you know all the easy ones, you know the medium ones, you've like gotten actual help on the hard ones and not just copied them down, okay? You would be prepared to earn a perfect 100. Okay, so if on this day, whether you are in person or we are still on KVA, you are going to have a 5-question quiz this day, and all 5 questions are going to be similar to this. Okay, so again, if you've really done this and you really understand it, these 5 questions should be no problem to you, and then you'll earn your other 50 points and have a perfect 100 quiz grade. Okay, if all you did was copy these and got your free 50, and then you come on here and you don't know how to do these questions, maybe get like 1 right, that's a 60. This is supposed to be your free 90 or 100 quiz grade, because like maybe you'll miss one, right? But you are not supposed to walk in here and get all of those wrong and have a 50, right? So the point of this is to give you 1 quiz grade where we are actually flat out telling you this is where the problems are coming from. Know them perfectly, you're gonna get them right. Okay, but again, it will not shock me if the first time we have one of these, half the kids miss it because what? They didn't listen to me. So don't be that kid, get it together. I promise you will make it through this class if you just stay on top of things. All right, so last but not least, let's talk about some vocabulary. So if you're following along at home and want to write some of these things down, these are your definitions. Now this page is up on Canvas and you're welcome to kind of copy it from there. But I am going to talk out loud about some of these things. And it might seem sort of like, oh, I get it, okay, great, scroll past it. Notation in geometry is insanely important. So important that you will literally miss quiz and test questions because your notation is written wrong or you didn't understand what the notation was asking you to do. For example, without even going into any of this, if I write AB, all capital, with nothing near it, that means one thing. If I put AB and there's a little line on top of it, that's another thing. AB with a line with 1 arrow. AB with a line with 2 arrows. And that's just to get started, okay? These are some of the first notations you're going to see. All of those mean different things, and we're gonna have to know information about them and know what a question is asking for. So if I'm just pointing that out because most kids, again, I'm going off of my experience with teaching this class, they take this first lesson as like, oh, I know what a line is, next, and they do not study the notation. I'm telling you, study your notation. All right, so there are three things we considered as undefined terms in geometry. What that means is there's no formal definition. Like if I ask you what is a point, we all kind of know like, oh, it's like a dot on the paper, right? But really a point in geometry is some like random point in the air. There's no physical object to look at. We just agree that when we're talking about a point, it is something that has no dimensions at all. It's just a reference spot that we like acknowledge, but it doesn't physically take up space. A line is considered to be a one-dimensional shape. So if I were to take actual pencil and draw a line and get out the world's best microscope that you could find and zoom in, that lead has some thickness to it, okay? But a real line doesn't. It's just this invisible point, invisible one-dimensional distance that I could measure, but again, it's all not really there. And a plane is a two-dimensional shape. So think like a rectangle is just a good mental image of a plane, right? It's got a length, it's got a width, but again, it doesn't physically take up space. So a sheet of paper, you could argue, is like a plane, but again, world's best microscope, this is not like zero. Like this is length, this is width, and this has a microscopic height, but a true plane has no height. Okay, so it seems silly, but if I ask you, hey guys, what are the three terms of geometry that do not have a true definition? The answer is point, line, plane. Will that be a quiz or a test question? Maybe. So write that down and know it. The three undefined terms are a point, a line, and a plane. So now we have some defined terms. If we say collinear points, it's got the word line in it. A collinear point means points that do occur on the same invisible line. Similarly, a coplanar point, got kind of like the word plane in it, are points that lie within that same sheet of paper plane. Okay, so those are some vocabulary words. Here are some notations that I need you to know the difference in. Okay, I'm going to pull up two of these at once. So we have the line AB. Notice that a line is represented by a line with arrows on the top, the same way that you should be plotting your MX plus B lines, where it's up over, up and over, you put little arrows on them. Okay, that is the proper way to notate that. It does have two directions, meaning this is going on for forever on both sides. And over here, a little comment that you're going to notice here later, it might not be the case, but in geometry, if I say line AB or line BA, those are physically the same object in space. Whether I go from A to B forever or B to A forever on both sides, the result is the same, and those are mathematically the same thing. So either one of those is referring to that same drawn line. Next, we have a segment. So a segment is notated by that bar with no arrows. And so basically what it would look like is this, but because we're being lazy, not like us, but like geometry people, textbooks, etc., don't want to do that, so they just draw the little bar on top. That represents a segment, and just like a line, segment AB is the same thing as segment BA because it represents that there are endpoints on both of those things. Okay? I'm going to point this out here, even though it's not in the notes that are listed. If I just write AB with no symbol above it at all, that is referring to like a distance or a length. So if I said like this was 5 and I said, hey, could you label what AB is, we would be asking for the distance of 5. Okay, but if I reference AB with a bar, I'm just referring to, hey, go look at the diagram at that space. Like there's something about that I need to tell you. Okay, so that's kind of the difference in those things. That distance and length will come up in our next lesson, so it's okay to just kind of put that on pause. Okay, next we have what's called a ray. A ray is, I want to call like half of a line because that's not really what it is, but they have one true endpoint and it goes for forever on one side. One true endpoint and goes on for forever. Because of that, these are not mathematically the same. Okay, ray AB means the dot point is on the A and then goes for forever towards B. Whereas this says the dot is at B and goes for forever towards A. But you'll notice we always draw the arrow pointing towards the right because that's the symbol for a ray. It has nothing to do with the way the arrow's actually pointing. You will always write it pointing towards the right for a ray. Another vocabulary word is called an opposite ray. An opposite ray basically just means that if I took these two rays and they share, so like this one's pointing to this way forever, this one's pointing this way forever, that the end point is the same end point and they're making a straight line, that's considered an opposite ray. So the two requirements are they have the same end point, like C going to A and C going to B, so they do share the same end point, and they make a perfectly straight line, so they're not like bent at all. It's a perfect line, same endpoint, arrows going different directions. So like CA and CB, if I said, are those opposite rays? Well, yeah, C to A, C to B are touching, and they make a perfectly straight line, so yes, those are opposite rays. Here are two examples of what would not be an opposite ray. Here is when they are only making a line but don't share the same endpoint. So C going to A and D going to B, they are on a straight line, but they are not attached to each other. So that would not be an opposite ray. And here is the example flipped where they do share the same endpoint, but they're not making a straight line because one and the other bend off at different directions and they aren't making a straight line. So that's what we mean is something an opposite ray or not. Okay, one of the last things, an intersection. We know that intersection basically means when two things cross each other, but in geometry we have a lot of interesting shapes that start to happen. So if I happen to be intersecting two lines, you'll notice that when they cross each other, if they cross each other, that it'll be at a single point. And similarly, if I take two sheets of paper and I bump them into each other, so one plane and another plane, they bump into each other, where they hit is going to be a straight line. Now again, you might have parallel planes that don't cross, but if they're going to cross and make a line. So those are also important things to know and things that we might ask you about. Okay, so a lot of it feels common sense, but just make sure you understand it really well. And lastly, if we ever use the term space in geometry, we were referring to the 3D set of all the points, like not just on your sheet of paper on the graph, but all the points 3D, like everywhere. And those definitions are important. For example, if I say, here's a point, and I'll do it again. If I want all of the points on a plane that are the same distance from this, well, all the points that are the same distance from this all the way around would end up creating a circle. But if I say, and again, that was for on a plane, but if I say in space all the points, well, not only are these points, but also all the points that are 3D popping off the board, 3D behind the board, this will actually end up creating a sphere. And so that's where, again, although it's nitpicky, we're in a pre-AP class where all those little details matter. And so talking about something being on a plane versus talking about it being in 3D space does make a difference, okay? So with that, the homework that goes with this is out of your textbook, right? So here's the pages it's gonna be on. And so you're always welcome to kind of fast forward to this slide or get it off your calendar whenever you need to see what the homework is. I will also always have, whether you're in class or watching these videos, you will see some reminders. Like apparently you guys will have a quiz next week on Wednesday. You will have your test on Friday the 18th. And that of course means that chapter worksheet is due to be finished and understood on the 17th, and that you're prepared to take a 5-question quiz over everything that's on it. So it's kind of like a take-home preparation quiz. So again, that's all the stuff that you need to know. There may be more quizzes between here and the test, and you can look at the calendar for that, but I'm always going to remind you, when's the next quiz, when's the next test, and a constant reminder of that date. Okay, that's it. You guys work on the stuff that you need to get done. This was a little bit of a long video because I felt like I needed to explain some details, but I'm gonna try to keep these at about that 15-minute mark so that you aren't missing out on all the things that you need. Okay, have a good one.